Today we're going to have a conversation with two presenters, myself being one, the other being Alyson Clarke. She's a guest speaker who's a principal analyst at Forrester, serving the e-business and channel strategy professionals. Alyson, like myself, is a veteran of the financial services industry. She's been spent 19 years prior to Forrester in the financial services industry, where she held senior positions with several leading banks and wealth management firms. Alyson's specialty is financial services. She helps financial service leaders understand and prepare for the future. I've been a fan of Alyson's for a while. I've read a lot of her research reports, and I highly encourage all of you to go ahead and look them up. They're very much on point, I think, for the challenges that financial firms face. I'm Evan Siegel. I'm with eGain, where I am the Vice President of Financial Services AI. And like you on the call, I'm also a financial services veteran. I spent 15 years at a large, in fact, a mega bank in the US, where I did a lot of things, but the piece that kind of transformed me and led me to my current role at eGain was I stood up a team of financial health coaches at this bank, and we helped, according to the annual report of this bank, over 50,000 customers. It was the most rewarding work of my career and launched me on a mission to democratize quality advice. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But first up will be Alyson, who's going to share some of her thinking about the bank sales and the opportunity to transform how banks handle that. So over to you, Alyson.
Perfect. Thanks, Evan, and hi, everyone. Just bear with us for a moment. We're just having a couple of glitches on the display here for you, trying to make sure we can show you the full kind of area of our slides. So please bear with us. We might be some adjustments as we go through. But let's make a start. So, okay, I just need to go to the next slide. We'll get control. No, I might get you to pass to the next slide. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So I want to take you through what we're seeing at Forrester in terms of bank sales, particularly digital sales. We recently did a review of a lot of the North American banks, and it's something we do quite regularly, where we go through and we look at the purchase journey from a consumer's perspective to really see what's going on and how firms are really putting their best foot forward in terms of trying to help customers make that purchase of the financial product that they're looking to buy. And so I want to share some of those insights with you today. Yeah, I don't have control of the slides here. Okay, perfect. Oh. So what we're seeing is that a lot of the digital sales processes and a lot of the sites we review the account opening on, it's clear that many banks still make it kind of too hard for people to open an account. I realize it's certainly come a long way, particularly digital account opening, as opposed to going into a branch. And we're certainly in a better state than we were, 5, 10 years ago, and each year it continues to improve. But when we start to look at it in terms of other kind of account opening experiences that we have, or purchasing journeys that we have with retailers and so on, it really still is kind of behind the game in terms of some of the usability and user experience of what we see. So I want to share with you just a couple of quotes that have come from our recent review of some of the larger banks in the US and Canada, when we went through a checking account opening experience. And these are quotes direct from prospects who are actually opening an account with the bank. So, we didn't pay them. These people were actually going in and opening an account and gave us their feedback as they were going through that process. So these are direct quotes from customers. When it comes to going online to buy a product from a bank, customers are very confused. So what we heard is, the website didn't fully answer my question. There were so many descriptive words that I had a hard time trying to decide. Another customer said, the checking account page was sort of confusing. Someone else said that it was difficult to find the information I was looking for. Another person, having to click on the PDF to see rates on a checking account was an unnecessary step. They should display rates when the zip code was entered. And then one of the last quotes which kind of, is kind of during the application stage of actually filling out the form and applying for the account, a customer said, it's unclear how long the actual application would be and what information I might need. So it was clear from the prospects and the customers who were opening accounts, not just our own expert review, that some of the processes were broken and there were some common mistakes that firms were making in terms of digital sales on their site. Next slide. And so 5 of the common mistakes that we see, just wait for that next slide to come over. There we go. So 5 of the common mistakes we see are, firstly, we see firms pushing for the sale, but showing little reason to buy. We see a lot of, buy now, apply online, click to apply and those sorts of things. But they're really not presenting a lot of information, except really, here's the price, here's the features. So it's very, very static, and it kind of starts to look a little bit like brochureware. And we're finding that firms aren't really putting their best foot forward and kind of giving customers reasons like, why should I choose you? Why should I choose your bank over another firm? The second thing is that there is an abundance of content. So there is a lot of content, although it's not necessarily compelling, as I noted in the first mistake that we often see. But with this abundance of content, one of the challenges, particularly on for example, a small mobile screen, which is what we're seeing firm customers increasingly use, is that they actually can't find what they're looking for. It's not that it's not there, they're scouring around, they're trying to navigate, and they're having trouble actually getting to the content and the information that they want to answer the questions that they have. The third thing that we see most commonly in terms of mistakes is that we see a lot of contents and tools that focus too much on product features and too little on what prospects need. So it kind of comes into this brochure where it's like, here's our product, here's our price, here's the features, want to buy. And that's kind of it. And so, we don't see a focus on content from a customer's perspective and what they might be looking for and things that might be going on. For example, we know, for example, that when consumers do buy financial products, it's usually as a result of some sort of, it might be a major life event or just some sort of kind of life moment that's happening. They might have moved, etc. And so, we really should be seeing content that kind of taps into that, but we don't. It really is like, here's our checking account, here's our mortgage, here's our price, want to buy. That's kind of it. The fourth thing is we see few firms helping customers more confidently make decisions. And so, whether it be, we may, as bankers, those of you on the call that are bankers, I used to be a banker, so I'll call myself a banker. I used to actually, we're not our customers, right? And we may think that checking accounts are simple, but given a customer really only opens a financial product once every maybe 3 to 5 years, it's certainly probably less frequently for checking accounts. It's not simple, right? Because when you open it, you've then got to transfer, your bill payments. You've got to, get money into the account, fix all of your direct deposits and things that are going on. There's a lot that you need to do as part of that process. And, one of the challenges is that, when it then comes to like making a decision and choosing the right product, few firms don't really help customers that much. And the last one is crossing channels. Crossing channels and getting human help isn't always easy. In fact, in some situations, we found that it's not even possible, right? I can't research products online and then when I don't know which one to choose, pick up the phone and kind of, say, hey, can I get further help? I mean, you can, but you can't continue the journey. It's not continuous, which is what customers are expecting these days. It's what they get when they deal with retailers. But unfortunately for most banks, the channels are very siloed, they're on very different technology, and it creates a really disjointed customer experience. And so if we move on to the next slide, some of the work that we see in relation to kind of how well firms are really helping customers. So there's some work that Forrester does around customer advocacy in terms of how well banks, if you like, or firms advocate for their customers. So, what we know from our research is that on average, less than 50% of the customers of US banks believe that their bank does what's right for them, not just what's best for the bank's bottom line. And we see this playing out in the digital sales process with the, hey, here's our price, here's our feature, do you want to buy? It's just all about the sale and not really about perhaps trying to help the customer make the right decision. And the interesting thing about this statistic is that it might kind of seem kind of bland on its own, but it actually translates to future purchase intent. So we've been doing this research now for more than a decade, and if less than 50% of your customers think that you're doing what's right for them as opposed to your bottom line, it's an almost one-to-one correlation. Less than 50% of your customers are going to consider you for their next financial purchase. And so it's important. It's important that your customers feel like you're doing what's right for them, because that will translate into future sales and the willingness to buy from you. So on to the next slide. How do you solve all this? How do you actually make this better? Well, one of the things that we find that the leaders do, and we always recommend firms think about when it comes to digital sales, is that you've got to help your prospects choose and apply for a product just like a good branch advisor would. Now, a good branch advisor, when you come in and have a chat to them, they're not just going to say, oh, here's the price of our product, here's the feature, here's the application form. That's not what they do, but that's what happens in a digital experience. Instead, they're going to have a conversation with you. They're going to get to know you a little better, perhaps find out what's going on. Oh, you've just moved cities, or oh, you're looking to buy a new house. They're going to start to understand a little bit more about your needs. Maybe understand, then how to help you choose the right account based on those particular needs. And so we find that often the face-to-face experience of buying a financial product with a branch employee is very different. In fact, it's often a better experience and a much more focused on the customer's needs than we find through digital experiences. But the good news is we have found some pockets of goodness here. We have seen some firms really try to kind of take some of the good practices that you see in a really good sales environment face-to-face and translate them into the digital world. So on the next slide, I've got an example here from Bank of America. So Bank of America actually helps prospects more confidently make decisions during the sale. So instead of just presenting them with the products and just saying, hey, which one do you want to buy, they start to kind of help them understand things that are related to their purchase. So this is on the checking account page, for example, and if you go to the Bank of America site, you can see then in the checking account page, they have information like, 8 tips for getting the most out of your checking account, creating a budget, common bank fees explained. So it's kind of educational information and insights that are relevant to the purchase and can help customers more confidently make a decision. Will every customer want this? No, they won't, but some will. Because whilst you and I here on this call might go, oh, but opening a checking account is easy, that's not the case for a lot of people, particularly if they haven't opened one for 10 or 15 years. So the next example, if we move to the next slide, is from Capital One. So Capital One's homepage, and it's right on the homepage. This isn't even just the checking account page. This is their homepage. Actually asks customers what do they want and why. And they don't ask them what they want in terms of, do you want a checking account? Do you want a savings account? Do you want a mortgage? What do you want? It's like, what are you trying to achieve? An example here is, I want to grow my money. And then it's like, well, why do you want to grow your money? And it could be to sleep better at night. And then based on that, the homepage will take them through to information that help guide them and give them tips and products and things around that particular goal that the customer is trying to achieve. Again, very similar to what would happen if you're in a face-to-face environment with a banker, but not what we see on most bank sales sites. So the next example, the next slide, is USAA. And I know any of you who have seen me present before or seen any of my webinars have probably seen this example a few times. It's an oldie, it's still relevant, it's not old because it's still there and it's still a goodie. And this is from USAA. And we're actually increasingly seeing firms around the globe start to develop very similar tools like this. So USAA actually helps customers take action and improve their financial readiness. And that could be around purchasing a product. So in this situation, for this customer, part of the advice is that perhaps they're not really preparing for the future in terms of their savings. They could do better. And if you look on the left-hand side, you can see the savings is in the at-risk category. So on the right-hand side, when you go through to the actual recommendation, the recommendation is start an emergency fund. So again, through this kind of information and guidance, it starts to prompt the customer about actions that they can take, but it relates it back to what the customer wants and what the customer needs. So if we can go to, I think we're a couple of slides before this, looking for the RBC example. If I can get you to go up, next one, yes, next slide. So we're seeing RBC in Canada. RBC in Canada do have a great, apologies, we'll just get to that slide. There we go. So RBC in Canada still provide something that we look for when we're kind of reviewing bank sales sites, and that is a personalized recommendation tool, or in this case, it's called a checking account selector. It's interesting how many firms have kind of dropped this, but you know, it's quite, customers find them quite valuable, and they can be very, very helpful. And again, maybe not for every customer, but for some customers, absolutely. And this is an example of what we would call a best practice. And the reason is, it's not just asking you questions about, you know, do you want to pay fees? Do you want to do this? It's actually asking questions about the customer's banking behavior. From things, this is not even all of the questions, right? So it's things like, how often do you use a debit card or an ATM? You know, how do you like to manage your banking? You know, how do you like to pay bill payments and do you transfer? What sort of things do you do? And by asking the customer what they actually do and how they like to bank, the firm is then able to, through the digital tool, make the right product recommendation. And then in the recommendation, they actually tell the customer how they, you know, why the recommendation was made. So they don't just say, hey, here's our recommendation. They say, we recommend this product and we think it's great for you because, you know, and listing some of the reasons why. Again, this is something that would happen if you were sitting in a branch with a really good branch advisor or a branch kind of banker. They would ask you these sorts of things. I mean, maybe not all of them, but a good one would. They would ask you these sorts of things. And then when they made a recommendation, they would explain to you why they made that recommendation. So moving on to the next slide, we have another example here. This is one from Bank of America. And what I really like about Bank of America, and this is the actual application form, what Bank of America does is they actually, again, just like a branch banker, they kind of talk to the prospect like a banker would. So instead of giving you this kind of like what looks like a paper-based form that's simply just thrust onto a digital screen and maybe even a small mobile screen where you've got, you know, 40 different form fields to complete and it takes you forever, they actually step out the application process and talk to the prospect like a human would, like a banker would, by saying, hey, what is your goal? You know, and in this case, it's to, you know, maybe buy a home. Well, are you currently under contract for the property? You know, and then it's like, pleased to meet you. You know, we wanted to get to know you a little better. So the way they've built and built the experience of the digital application process is they've listened and learned of what happens in a human interaction sales environment, and they've used that kind of human language instead of kind of treating you like a kind of inanimate application form, I guess. And what's also great about Bank of America is they make it very easy to get human help. During the process, you know, they might invite you to chat, but also, you know, you can see things like if I got questions, if I want to speak to a person, because that's really important. Customers sometimes will very much want to pop out of that digital process, and you shouldn't see that as a failure. It can be a good thing because by then talking to a human, it might end up as a deeper engagement. It might be several products that are purchased, but it'll certainly make for a far richer experience and a deeper engagement for the customer as well. So one more quick example in this sort of vein, another one from USAA on the next slide. Again, when you're sitting there with a banker and they open an account with you, they don't just get you to fill out a form and go, yep, great, thanks. See you later, which is sometimes what happens when you apply through digital. You fill out all the paperwork and it goes, yep, great, we've opened your account. And you're sitting there going, okay, what do I do now? Because even a checking account, there's a lot that goes with a checking account, right? And so a good branch banker would actually talk you through, okay, now we've opened it up, let me help you set up the deposits, let me help you, do you need overdraft protection? Oh, here's all the documents that you need. Oh, and let's get some bills set up for you so that your bills are getting paid out of your account as well. A really good branch banker would do that then and there with a customer, but sometimes we quite often see that missing from a digital experience. And what I love about this example here on the screen is that USA have done that. They've translated some of that help and those actions into the actual account opening process to really help customers feel comfortable and confident about what's going on and what they need to do next to get things up and running. One more really quick example before I go into kind of the second way I think that firms can think about improving sales processes. In terms of the digital account opening experience, we're starting to increasingly see firms think about chatbots. Now, in a lot of cases, it's simply just to answer questions, but to be perfectly honest, this is the future of account opening, right? Using interactive agents. Now, this is an example of UBank in Australia, which is part of the National Australia Bank, their digital offshoot. And they have an interactive agent called Mia that can help prospects apply for a home loan. You can ask her all these questions and she can guide you through the experience and so forth. And what's interesting is that, her persona was actually crafted with the customer in mind. They wanted someone to be smart, empathetic and trustworthy that doesn't use bank jargon. And that's exactly what she does. And I'm told that she also has a bit of a cheeky personality, which is very, very Australian. So it's, nice to see a little bit of the kind of local kind of flavour coming through there in the way that they have actually built out Mia the bot. But, if we think about digital account opening, as I said, people really only open an account once every, say, 3 to 5 years, which is not very frequently. And so when they go in and use your user interface that you've built in your application process, it's got to be right first time because they cannot learn that experience. Mobile banking, people can learn that because they're in a few times a week maybe. So there's a few things that maybe if they're not quite great, customers will learn where things are. But with an account opening experience, you have to get it right first time because there is no time to learn the experience because they do it once and that's it. They're not back again for 5 or more years. And it'll be very different by them. And so that's why, conversational interfaces and interactive agents like Mia are a great way forward and certainly where I think the future of digital account opening is and should be going. So onto my kind of secondary, I think, in terms of how banks can improve their sales. If we just move to the next slide, I think the second important element is to empower frontline employees with the right digital tools. So, we talked about the digital account opening experience, but even the account opening experience in the branch. You might have a good banker that gets all this stuff right, but not everyone is the same, right? You get different quality. Some people are really great at selling, others aren't. Perhaps some are newer, some are better trained, some have been around a lot longer. It varies. But to really empower them and help them close the sale, in a compliant way, first of all, but also secondly, to get the right outcome for the customer and to really help the customer, digital tools, empowering frontline employees with digital tools is certainly what we're seeing a lot more of and a great way to also lift your sales and conversions. So a couple of quick examples. On the next slide, we have Sberbank from Russia. So what we're seeing is Sberbank has deployed whisper agents, as I call them, or virtual assistants. And it's like a chatbot, but they're helping call center agents personalize interactions. So the idea, and their whisper agent is called Anna. So Anna actually listens to conversations between the clients and the call center agent, and then processes them using natural language processing to kind of categorize the client's requests. And she's in early stages, so right now I think she's still categorizing, but the next iteration of her, and certainly we're seeing this in insurance and other industries, and we know banks are moving in this direction and investing in it, is that Once the whisper agent starts to get trained and can categorize and really understand what they're listening to and learn, then you'll start to see them doing things like providing advice and information in real time to the call center agent. So they'll pop up with messages on screen. They might pull information from your knowledge systems or from your CRM systems. They might guide the contact center agent on the next questions to ask. And some of them are even, they can even understand and detect certain emotions coming out in the voice calls, and they might be able to pick that up faster than a human agent, and so they might kind of warn the agent, for example, the customer is sounding stressed or they're detecting stress or something, and it could be an emotion that a human not everyone can always pick up, and that allows them to then be more empathetic to the customer as well. And so it's doing a couple of things, right? They're helping provide, more personalized experiences with better data insights, but also faster servicing and more high quality personalized responses to that customer. And another quick example of using these in the next slide is Westpac in Australia. So they're also using an AI agent that's listening in on calls as well, but they're using it for a compliance situation. So what happens is they're listening to the calls, they're advising the call center representatives on what to say and ensuring regulatory compliance in what they're saying, and calling them out. If they're using hard sales techniques and things like that, which, are kind of frowned upon in Australia by the regulators. So the AI is kind of being the compliance monitor and helping to coach the agent, helping them understand what to say and how to say it. And, by the use of AI, they can now analyze 100% of the calls kind of in real time, as opposed to 2% when they would have supervisors dialing in manually to monitor calls. So, there's some compliance benefits to these technologies as well as customer benefits. And then one last example for you is from Banco Millennium Atlantico Bank Millennium Atlantico, and they have they've given branch staff digital account opening tools that have reduced account opening time by 50%. And again, this is a trend we're seeing, right? A lot of firms are not just thinking about how do we build really fast digital account opening tools for our customers to self-serve with and use digitally on their own, but also how do we put it in front of the bankers in the branch so that when the customer walks in the branch, they're also getting that same great experience. Because for a lot of firms now, it might take me 2 minutes to open a checking account online. I go into the branch, and even apart from the conversation, the paperwork takes half an hour, and I'm signing things in triplicate, and I've got 40 pages of forms. It's a nightmare. And so by empowering those frontline employees with guided selling tools and other things, and digital account opening tools like this, you can actually not just improve the efficiency of the staff opening the account and the compliance of that. What you're also doing is freeing up their time to have those conversations with the customers, to make it more engaging, to uncover their needs, and potentially, deepen the relationship with the customer right from the start. It might be that the customer really needs multiple accounts based on something that's going on in their life at the moment, not just that one account they came in to open for. So, there's multiple kind of benefits from tools like this. So just to kind of wrap up before I hand up to Evan is that, I guess what we're really seeing is, as I said, we're seeing account opening still not that great. There's a lot of work that can still be done to make it easier for customers to open an account. There's a lot of barriers that can be removed, be it digitally or even in a branch. And I think, your best my best kind of advice for you right now is to really invest in digital sales and advice tools that will deliver a better experience, not just for the customer, but also for the employee. Because by empowering the employee, you're also creating a better experience for the customer as well, and that will drive better engagement and also more conversions. So with that, I'm going to hand back to you, Evan.
So Thanks so much, Alyson. So as Alyson and I were preparing this talk, we've determined that we're kindred spirits. We think about banking in the same way, and so what I'm going to do is I'll go through a similar structure to Alyson. I'm going to share some of my observations of where some of the pain points are around sales and advice, and then share some technology solutions that you all can think about to possibly apply to solve these pain points. And Alyson talked about the advocacy that's important for banks to have. And I want to kind of zero in on some of the segments where that advocacy is really critical for customers. So there's one that actually is so commonly mentioned, it's in the campaign trail. It's not on this page, but just to mention it, what you hear people talking about all over the news is that the Federal Reserve did a study and found out that only 40% of people cannot meet a $400 emergency expense. They don't have enough money in their account. But there's even a more valuable segment for banks that are struggling financially, and that's the millennials, which is depicted here. Some of the facts about millennials are depicted here on this page. First of all, they're incredibly important to us all, to all bankers, because it's the largest living generation. It's a cohort of 72 million people, and they're really struggling financially. And two data points really prove this out. The first one is, this is from the Wall Street Journal, the average net worth is 40% less than Gen X at the same age, and the reason for a lot of that is that the 33% of them have heavy student loan debt. And this is all driven by the fact that the millennials graduated. One issue driving is the student debt, and the other is a lot of them entered the workforce during or shortly after the Great Recession, and that really hinders their earning power. So you've got this great cohort, large and highly educated, who are your future emerging affluent, who are looking for banks to help them sort of get on their feet and advocate for them. If you go to the next page, and banks, all of you out there, your organizations want to do right by customers. If you look at most banks' mission, values, vision statements, etc., it's very common to find statements like, we're going to help customers achieve their dreams, succeed financially, financial empowerment. So it's real common in the mission, vision statements. If you go to the next page, and same thing with credit unions. And if you think about that, it makes total sense, because credit unions exist to serve their members. So when I'm out there now as a partner to these banks and financial institutions, what I commonly hear from the executives in the trenches, the folks in the bank channel, the branch channel, the call center, the digital channel, is we don't do a very good job of living up to our mission, vision, and values. We're not actually, as well as we would like, helping our customers succeed financially. So if you go to the next page, to sort of further drive that point home, I want to share the findings of an extensive mystery shopping experience that I've done. I've gone into many bank branches with the following mystery shop situation. I've got $15,000 of credit card debt I would like to consolidate. What I don't tell the bankers is that I also have a lot of $50,000 of equity in my home, and I think it'll take me 5 years to pay off that debt. And so one mystery shop example really brings home the typical experience you get in the human channel. And that is, I went in, the banker that actually helped me in this case was a seasoned banker, 8 years experience, and actually the branch manager as well. I said I wanted debt consolidation, and he instantly, without asking me any needs assessment questions, zeroed in on the promotional offer of the day, which is a 0% APR, 6-month fixed rate credit card offer. On the brochure that he handed me, which he did not point out, and in the fine print, was that there's actually was a 3% balance transfer fee. So not a great experience, because he did not recommend the best solution for me. He did not spend any time sort of assessing my needs. The much better, the much less expensive option would have been the home equity line of credit. I would actually even argue, I'm not a compliance expert, but I know enough to be dangerous, and I would actually argue he likely also violated some of the UDAP rules by not doing necessarily, by being misleading, not really kind of figuring out what the best product for me. So as a customer, that was a bad experience. And then if I put my old bank sales strategy hat on, it was also a bad experience. He said he would follow up with me. He took down my information. He took it down literally on a scrap of paper, did not make me feel like a valued customer. He said he would follow up with me, and he never did. And so no follow-up. As far as he knew, I was a hot customer ready to buy, and from a bank management standpoint, no data on the fact that that conversation happened. So sort of a lot of gaps. If you go to the next page, so as we think about the human channel, we see 3 models that are very prevalent, with the first 2 being the most prevalent. You have the bankers who are order takers. So tell me what product you want, and I'll take the application. You also have product pushers, people who are either, there's offers in their system that are big data generated, often not very accurate. They're promoting a special. Or what also happens, because a lot of these bankers, as I'll talk about in a second, are relatively new, it's an entry-level job, they only feel comfortable selling a couple of products, and so they're a hammer and everything's a nail. You see this a lot with credit cards or bill pay, sort of the couple products that more junior bankers feel comfortable selling. And some banks do needs assessment models, but those needs assessment models are not technology driven, and that's a really hard thing to do well. To have a human being who's not that experienced figure out what question to ask, listen to the answer, figure out the next best question to ask, and then listen to all that feedback and make recommendations. So most of those models, as I'm out there talking to a lot of bankers, fail, and the banks are sort of pulling them back and retooling how to deliver them. If you go to the next page, sort of driving the pain points in the human channel is that, you know, let's face it, financial services, banking, they're complex industries. You've got complicated products, you've got very challenging concepts, things like loan amortization, you know, debt to equity ratio, compounding, and you have not only an inexperienced workforce, but one with high turnover, particularly that frontline team member in the call center and the branch. And as one other comment, just to sort of add in here, is I was talking to a banker up in the Pacific Northwest, and he was confiding to me that not only does he have high turnover, but in the Pacific Northwest, he was in Seattle, he's like, look, people don't want to, the young people don't want to go into financial services. The technology companies are where all the best talent goes, so he was feeling that he's not even getting top talent. So it makes the challenges for delivering quality sales and advice in the human channel even greater. If you go to the next page, similar to what Alyson was talking about, we see the digital channel as being very primitive. Without, you know, Alyson pointed out some good examples of people being innovative, but most people, most banks, most credit unions have this siloed product view where it's basically, as using the exact words Alyson used, it's brochureware. So let's take that example of the customer, like what I was mystery shopping, who wants to do some debt consolidation. Basically, what banks ask customers to do is read all those product descriptions and then figure out which scenario, which product is best for them. Most people are not financially savvy. It's a complex industry. That is not a great customer experience, and that's a model that does not serve customers well. Some banks do have tools out there. They're generally isolated. They're generally not, they're hard to find. They're generally not all-encompassing. They're one-off, and there's a study that's on the takeaway box on the bottom of this page that suggests if you're trying to help people change their habits, either giving them content of like this is how to budget or an isolated tool, those pieces do not work. It does not get people the advice, does not get people to change their habits, and does not get them to really address their financial needs. So human channel's broken, digital channel very broken. Go to the next page, please. And then the final piece where I just see just this, I would argue possibly the worst experience in banking as part of the sales and advice value chain is the credit decline experience. You know, it happens a lot, anywhere from 1 in 10 to 1 in 8, depending what data points you look at, of people that apply for a product get declined. And based on the executives I talk to, it is possibly the worst customer experience score that banks get. I've heard net promoter scores of -50 to -80. And that's because what the banks do is a lot of times they'll encourage you, they'll make offers, they'll send you promotional material. Please apply, we'd love to have your business. Customer goes through the time, 5 minutes to 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the product, to do the application. And then the bank tells them, we don't want your business. And as this excerpt on the right-hand side of the page shows, basically all they'll do is say, hey, if you want to fix this, here's a number, good luck. Not a great experience. And it's a great opportunity if banks were to take that differently, use technology to guide and coach this customer. They could take this horrible experience, turn it around, and in many instances take a decline to an approve and earn the profit and the benefit that that customer as a loan customer could deliver. So sort of seeing these issues that banks have, what we've done here at eGain is we've taken our long-standing technology that's in the omni-channel customer engagement. We've been at this for 20 years around chat, email, messaging, knowledge management, all powered by AI, and just slightly tweaking it and now moving it into the sales and advice space focused on financial services. And the spectrum of services that we offer, this is brand new, hot off the presses. We do everything from guided sales, so we'll help you apply, we'll help you onboard you. We'll do a true needs assessment powered by AI that'll give you exactly the right question depending on the need. Go through that series of questions, then make recommendations. It'll go to advice. And the difference between sales and advice as we think about it is that sales is product-centric, so what's the best product to fit your need? Advice is what's the next best action that can help you. The average customer only buys a product every 3 to 5 years, and so you need to engage your customers with advice, especially your most valuable customers, the emerging affluent, et cetera. And so you need to have your bankers or your digital channel kind of keep them marching along their path with the right next best financial action that's customized to their situation. This tool does that. And then finally, the piece that I get most excited about, we've extended the technology to create coaching and advice and follow-up, because the banker or the bot, the digital solution can give them the next best action, but that's only as good as the customer actually taking that action. And so our capabilities stay with that customer and follow up, encourage the progress, celebrate the success. So that's the sort of the core capabilities. And then what we've done is we've broken it out into 4 different products, which can be used together or separately. And I'll go through each of these in more detail, but the 4 products, just as a high level, are there's an application wizard, a banker bot, a sales advisor desktop, which is that same banker bot capability, but more fully envisioned for a banker to walk a customer through the experience, and then finally a virtual coach. So let me explain these each in a little bit more detail. So the banker bot takes that sort of brochureware experience and turns it on its ear and makes it more like a sitting down with the absolute best banker at your organization. So if your best banker determines what's the customer's financial priority or objective, where are they in their journey, and then by asking questions, always going through the series of the needs assessment questions, and then figuring out, based on what you've told me, what's either the best product or the best action for you to achieve your experience, as opposed to having to read all that brochureware. This is an AI-powered conversation. It's the recommendation based on the goals in that customer's situation. We're able to pull information from the CRM system, so it's a know-me experience. You don't need to ask the customer every question. If there's data we can pull from the CRM system, we'll do that. It has a pause and restart option, and finally, if the customer needs to get escalated to a banker, that can happen, and the banker will then have full context of what was the conversation with the banker bot. So that's the banker bot. Next example is, again, it's my favorite. It's the virtual coach. And what it does is, if the banker bot or a banker has laid out an action plan for a customer, it stays with that customer. Or another great use case, and in fact I'll use this for the verbal picture because I think it's the clearest one, is let's say you have a customer that applied for a credit product and they were declined. What the virtual coach can do is assess for that customer, why were they declined, what's the thing they need to do to address the issue they were declined. Let's say it's improve their FICO score. Pick a simple journey, a couple-step journey to start them on the process of improving their credit score, and then staying with them on an ongoing basis via messaging so that they actually follow through on the plan, reducing friction along the way if they stall, reinforcing the advice and celebrating success as they make progress. This is a technology platform. What it'll have for you is the ability to kind of, what's your financial advice platform or viewpoint? How do you want to speak to the customers? That comes from our clients. It works via mobile, tablet, or laptop, but it's not an app. It's an app-like experience, but we actually believe that making people download another app is sort of a friction point, so we want to get away from that. It's AI-powered, so the conversation feels very natural and very personalized and customized. As I already mentioned, it has the follow-up messages to keep the customers on plan, and we have the capability to include lots of behavioral science, behavioral economics principles, and the best way to do that is via testing. So there's a lot of hypotheses about what actually gets people to incorporate new habits. Because we have a full reporting and analytic capabilities, what will happen here is lots of experimentation of nudges, and then what we see actually engages people and gets them to move along their plan will be what stays. Finally, it's something that can be sort of customized, tooled, and enhanced by non-bankers. I'm sorry, by non-IT folks. We actually have on here, we brought a recent banker in, and he's the one who's actually building out this capability because our platform is very easy to use. It's almost like object-oriented programming. So that's the virtual coach. And then finally, the application wizard. And you know, it's a lot like what Alyson was talking about. This is a very similar capability. It's AI-powered. It's a guided conversation. It sort of takes the uncertainty of a lot of the application and walks the customer through in a guided conversation. And what McKinsey says is that 50% of digital applications actually in the banking world actually get abandoned. Our first client who's applying the application wizard actually has a much higher abandon rate than that experience. And the reason is, you know, look, we all think that the questions on a loan product application are pretty straightforward, such as what's your income, but there's a lot of uncertainty in there. Like, do I have alimony? Do I include that in the income line or not? And so this tool allows you to kind of, in natural language, allow the customer to ask the questions, get them quickly answered, and if it gets to be beyond the capability of the virtual assistant, escalate to a banker with full context. We use this solution with an insurance company on one of their forms, and we were able to take the abandon rate down from 75% to 25%. And so, as you all know, in any sort of, when you've got someone hot to apply for your product, to keep them in there, to complete the application, if you can just improve abandon rate by a few percentage points, a lot of money falls to the bottom line, and it's a much better customer experience. And so these capabilities obviously help with the top line, but there's also a compliance element here too that's also very beneficial. You know, the sales space, the sales practices is a hot area. Wells Fargo has sort of gotten in the soup here. It's an issue in Europe. It's a lot of companies are very sensitive to this. And the fundamental reason is, as my mystery shop experience shows, no one really knows what's going on in that banker to human in the channel interaction. Why are bankers recommending what they are? What's the reason that they're doing that? And so what our solution allows you to do is have full visibility to what was recommended, full audit trail. What was the conversation? What questions were asked? What answers were given? And then use a consistent criteria to recommend those solutions. And so whenever we get, as we're out in the field talking to banks about this, the compliance community actually gets very excited about this ability to have full documented rationale, audit trail, and reporting analytics around the sales conversations. So that's our solution that we see addressing a lot of the banking solutions. Just 2 seconds on who is eGain and what's our experience. So we're a 20-year-old publicly traded company. Our roots are in the omni-channel customer engagement space, which is all around chat, email, and knowledge management, sort of using a platform to guide service folks, whether they be in a branch or in a call center, to follow the process, using AI to guide those experiences. We're a global company with over 250 customers, with the financial services being our largest segment. And if we've intrigued, if you go to the next page, if we've intrigued any of you around sort of what the capabilities are, our new sales advisor, or the pieces I walked through, and you're all interested, we do have an innovative offering, which we call Innovation in 30 Days, which is a full production pilot that can be up and running, that the clients get to use for 30 days. It's customer facing, get to use it at no cost. And at a minimum, if this is a topic that you're as passionate about as I am and as interested in, I would love to carry on the dialogue about opportunities to improve sales and advice. And you know, you can see my email on there. I'd love to sort of continue the conversation with any of you, or if you have ideas you want to bounce off me. It's sort of where I'm focusing, is how do we change, how do we democratize quality advice in the financial services sector. So with that, we have a few minutes as advertised for questions. So I'm going to just take a second here and see if we have any questions in the, so if you have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat space. We did get one question, and Alyson, I'd like you to weigh in these as well. We did get one or two before the session started. actually here one, I actually do have one just coming in on my email. So both Evan and Alyson lay out some compelling issues for current bank sales processes. What keeps banks from addressing these issues, and what advice do you have to help those on the call break through the barriers? So
Yeah,
I'll take it first, Alyson, and then I'll turn it over to you to get your take on that. Yeah, so what I see is, I see a couple of things that are keeping the banks from going after it. One is I think that the technologies that are out there are new. You saw it in Alyson's piece. You know, these are sort of emerging technologies. I think another issue that is hampering the banks is just in general because it's dealing with customers and advice, the compliance and regulatory steps are intense. You got to make sure that it's a good solution for the customer. It's not having any unintended consequences. And so the evaluation process to make changes to the sales and advice process is very steep and slow. So those would be two things that I see. Alyson, what would you add?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to the way some of these experiences are designed. We often see that firms are not properly using the foundations of good UX design. They're not, they might be copying other banks or things like that, rather than actually looking at their own situation and doing proper customer journey mapping, for example, really understanding those journeys and then building out those experiences as a result. Now, some firms say that they're using them, but we quite often see that they're not used consistently. So they're used in an ad hoc manner. And what happens then is you end up with a massively disjointed experience. Or it could be that the experience by the designers has been built and it's great, and then compliance comes in and tells you to add 20 other things. And they do, rather than going back and starting to look at that customer journey and look at the design of that experience with those compliance requirements in mind as they're building it. So, when you keep adding these things on top of, you start to lose the overall kind of seamlessness and consistency in the market, in the experience, because, these kind of basics of design and customer research activities aren't done with any kind of rigor or defined cadence.
Okay, great. We have another question, which is, and Alyson, why don't you start this one? So your comments have been very focused on the banking industry. We have people from insurance and other industries as well. Do you see any differences in other parts of the financial services world, such as insurance or fintechs? Are they facing the same issues, or are they different issues?
They're facing the same issues. I think they're further behind the banks. Typically what we see when it comes to innovation around, be it digital sales or, like mobile banking and those sorts of things, is that the retail banks tend to be slightly ahead of the insurers, and the banks and insurers are way ahead often of the kind of wealth management and investing firms. So same problems are happening, and same kind of challenges. When you start to look at things like wealth and insurance, they're even more complicated to open than sometimes a basic banking product. So you really do have a lot of compliance things to kind of and hurdles to overcome as you're designing the process. But again, back to my point, with rigor in that process, with good customer research, with good empathy of what the customer's going through, and a good understanding of what might happen in a really great human to human sales experience, and then thinking about how you might translate that into a digital experience, that's the sort of stuff that will help overcome some of those problems.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, and we've actually been engaging with a number of insurance companies, and what we hear is they have a slightly different issue on the human side, on the human channel, which is a lot of them have sort of these broker agent networks, and it's those are baby boomers who are leaving and retiring in droves, and they're having the same issue with attracting top talent at the young level. And so they're seeing all the expertise walk out the door and no way to sort of to document that and get the right advice and guidance to customers. And so they love the idea of a tool, AI-powered tool to sort of, while they have this expertise in, lock it in, get the flows, the processes, the questions, the needs assessments documented, and then as they bring in the next generation, they don't have to spend all the time necessarily training on that. That can be driven by the new technologies that are out there, and instead they can focus the training on the other important pieces around sales, around soft skills, etc. So last question, we have just a couple minutes. What kind of variation do you see among bankers in the sales productivity realm? So I'll take the first crack at that, Alyson, and then turn over to you for the last word. So, I think BCG has done a good study, the Boston Consulting Group, in this area, and they've seen that the difference between the sales effectiveness of top bankers and bottom performers is an 8x difference. And so, it's always going to be around skills, it's going to be around tenure. That explains a lot of it. And again, it's another perfect place where technology can help fill that gap, make for a much more consistent experience, because the technology can guide the bankers through the steps that are needed to get the right advice, the right follow-up to the customers, and make all the performers sort of follow the processes that the top performers naturally follow. So Alyson, any comments on this question?
Yeah, I think, I don't have a statistic and I haven't seen one before, but what you were saying there of 8 times feels right to me, having personally led sales teams and also seen and kind of looked after, branch sales teams over the span of my career as well. There is massive variance. There are some things you can do with kind of training. Some people just don't have the kind of learning aptitude of others, or to be able to kind of grasp complex information sometimes that's needed. Sometimes it can be soft skills as opposed to knowledge. And, I know firms will put in programs in place to perhaps try and get everybody performing on the same level, but I also see a lot of training programs investing in the best performers as opposed to uplifting every performer. The great thing that we now have available to us that certainly really was not as abundant kind of 10, 20 years ago is digital technologies, right? Guided selling tools and things that, like some of the examples we've given you today, that can really help minimize that variance. Are you still going to get variance? Yes, you are, but it's going to be a lot less. It's going to lift the bottom end of the pack up to a certain level, and at the very least help ensure a greater level of compliance on the way through. So, I think, I have to admit, when I was kind of looking after teams and things, a decade or so ago, I didn't have the sort of tools that are available now at my fingertips. I wish I did, because I think this is the way to go to help reduce that variance. You still need the other things like training and learning from your best salespeople. All of that stuff is relevant, and you need to continue to do that. But I think digital tools can go a long way to certainly minimizing and reducing the significant variance that you'll see across kind of large frontline sales teams in banking.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much, Alyson. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I hope the folks on the call got a lot out of it, and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye-bye.